I worry about touch. I'd foreseen this scenario, albeit not in this form, but as a natural outcome of unrestrained consumption. Safe inside my hermit island bubble, I'd been worried about the impending peril that bandwidth, internet connectivity, travel were in, but most of all, I worried about the loss of touch. Life has been online for long already. Voices have been in the head more than in the flesh. See, this isn't entirely new. This inwards, indoors, I've inhabited a long while. The stasis, the mass of time drifting, stretching, shrinking, forming. I am meant to be prepared for this. I am, more or less. Screens are vital. Distance is acute. Distraction is native. Attention is shattered. What do we pay attention to as we maplessly walk the flatness of screens? What response evoked in us? Does flatness deepen edges and corners in our minds? Against the uncertainty of flatland, will we erect walls and edifices? Will we hem ourselves into maps with fences and boundaries we didn't really need? I find the German word for this now appropriate. Einschränkungen, restrictions, limitations. How the sound of it correlates with the feeling of shrinking it creates in English, the image of a closet it sends up in German. See, this isn't new to me, the mass of time, formless, stretching, meandering, drifting, slack. But as time undulates inside a new landscape, the sense of sliding is unmissable. Savoring empty time in a hypercity with a crowd to hold you afloat is not the same as when new, unfriendly coordinates of shrinking landscape appear. Time is short, even as we adapt to the rearrangement of space onto our screens. Time is short, time is slow, time has passed, there is now.
Oh, when shall we meet again?
When you haven't met someone for long, you fill in all the sense information you will not have. This is like reading a book. You fashion characters out of the contours of sentences and images on screens. You construct their smell out of repressed memories, if smell's your thing. Their presence a lump of clay your mind can form as you like. When there is precarity, awareness of finity as we wait for an opening, those far away are more present because they are vitally absent. You have to connect the dots for yourself, and thus you pay deeper attention to their presence. This makes absence a gift to our present selves.
Waves invade the shore, and now we
Touch, no touch.
know.
I worry about spam. Such an archaic word. The technique of spamming is fundamental to existence in how the seeds of life propagate, and to the destruction of being in how propaganda disseminates in its focus to eliminate. Viruses online and off of our bodies and minds, environments contaminated online and off, minds infected by fascist propaganda campaigns of scrambling information, weaponizing obfuscation, bodies infected by careless minds refusing to cooperate. Signals are jammed, visuals are authoritarian. Sun is out, quiet is quieter. Heimweh, saudade, nostalgia. 12 years ago, in a dive on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, the bartender asked me what my plans were now. I said it will be a couple of years of drifting. She said, I wish more people said that, with a definite smile I cannot forget. It warmed me to my non-root. My work, in its drifting, unfinished, groping manner, concerns itself with memory, engaging with space, what experiencing the other is like, maplessly. Particularly, I am concerned with conscious but not so conscious engagement with the city. How is that supposed to work now? I agonize over the project I decided to begin, the vanity of it in such a time, doubt, and searching.
So there was this mountain right behind Everest when I was growing up that we never had access to. But there were hills there. They weren't really mountains. They weren't that tall, but they were like, I mean, we were little at the time, so they felt tall. I would always wonder what's there. You know, that image is still fairly vivid.
Are you seeing it?
Yeah,
Where's the train?
this is Anushakti Nagar.
Yeah,
Are you looking for the train line?
there's the Trombay
Yeah,
police station.
Mankod Gaon,
Mankud station. Okay, so then here's Cotton Green.
Cotton Green, Ray Road,
And Ray Road, here it
right
is.
next to it, Dockyard. I'm 100% sure I got those right.
And then Sanders Road, and then Masjid and BT. Oh, here it is, Britannia. Huh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what, you
Britannia
used to
Industries,
walk
yeah.
there?
I used to walk, yeah. So
Acha,
I'd get out
acha.
the station and just walk down this road.
Mm-hmm.
It was always very crowded.
Huh.
It was all sort of fairly narrow and cramped. I tend to put structure even in places where it doesn't exist. Whether it's my thought process, whether it's my movement, make stops that you know and like take turns that you never had before. The most unstructured thing that I tend to do on a regular basis is when I go for a walk, I tend to go one or two different ways because they are the ones that I like.
Why do you
And
like them?
I like them because they are green, they are lush, they are places where my dog wants to go. Those are her spots. She likes some areas versus some other areas. A lot of restaurants are now sort of out, and it's a very different look and feel that what it used to be. So I like that. It's very lively now.
There's a little bit of noise in it, right? Like it's not
Grain and
fully.
noise,
Yeah,
etc.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And I have this CD of Ella Fitzgerald. There's a level of graininess to them that comes through. This place where I bought coffee from yesterday that has kept me awake. It's a small French cafe, very small. Um, what's that song? And I think it was like a slightly old greenish recording of it. Yeah, it's a Nancy Sinatra song. These boots are made for walking. I enjoyed that just as much as like if, let's say, someone contemporary came and sang that song today with no greeniness. I think I would enjoy both of them just as much. For me, I don't know what imperfect is. If it sounds good to me, then
Yeah, makes
maybe
sense.
it's perfect. Being like a lukha, being in the moment, hanging out with your people, just being experiencing that while still having like a longer term plan. This was just as addictive or attractive for me to like stay doing the lukhagiri. I thought both could coexist.
Especially during this lockdown period, there was a lot of silence, and I really appreciated it. In Bombay, I have not grown up with any traffic noise.
Even though we grew up in such a big city.
Yeah. We could escape into that silent zone.
Is this the first time that you are away from the city so for such a long time?
Yes.
For you, do you feel changing the way you're connecting to the city?
I look at it in a very different light, because I'm not involved in the day-to-day hassles. For instance, I'm not fighting to get a seat in the train. There is this sense of urgency. I don't know sometimes whether it is justified or not, but there is a sense of urgency in everything in Bombay.
There are days here when I'm running, when I'm going somewhere. I don't need to run, but it's a different way of walking that we have.
There is no ambling in Bombay unless you want to really slow down on your own.
What is around you?
Old villages which are rapidly urbanizing. Any person who's been living here for long would tell you that how they would have seen some wildlife roaming around, and how the lake would have been healthier, and suddenly like there's this boom that really happens. It's like the big bang of Bangalore. This is where you will find all your e-commerce giants and all your banks. The analogy that I like to draw here is this is like the Navi Mumbai version. In Navi Mumbai, you will have the fishing villages, IT companies around harbor areas.
Yeah.
It's also cut off from mainland Bombay, and it has a sort of this hybrid culture of its own. In fact, one of the things that we had started when I was conducting walks was the biodiversity walks. Wherever I have written about it also, I have always focused on the urban ecology. So how nature thrives or struggles amidst all the urbanization. There are some people on Instagram. There's a guy called Aslam who goes deep into the national park, looking for the source of various rivers.
Right.
And I think it's called the Mumbai River Project. So if you see where Poisar River originates, which runs behind my house in Bombay,
right,
it is pristine water.
Wow.
And kids are playing, and tribal kids who live there, and a lot of animals within that forest. If you go in the monsoon time, like now, you would see some deer going by, you would see a kingfisher. And if you were lucky, you would see a snake in the water. But how the condition deteriorates.
Authorities are sort of taking this lockdown, etc., as an excuse where you can't really go and agitate against it as you used to before.
Where public gathering is.
So somehow it seems I'm a bit worried about these spaces which were not so built up. And now they're becoming very sort of boundaried off, fenced off, and
the road becomes a privilege.
yeah, exactly. And it's also like encouraging cars, right? Who has the decision making? Obviously, the people in power who decide, but it also used to be the traditional communities earlier who used to have a way of deciding what how they engage. Like,
And I don't know how they have been managing. Where do they produce and where do they sell? Because
scrolling on this map here at this point, and I'm looking at the Vashi Bridge, and we used to have a hill behind my building, and just behind that hill, I always used to think this is the end of the world. There's nothing behind this, right? But once this freeway thing came up, you started seeing what is happening behind that hill, and from the distance you can see the salt pans and you can see the industrial areas.
The refinery lights you can see from the far. They are glowing in the night. From one of our buildings, from the top floor, we could see into Anshakti Nagar, and one of the best views was the mountain, the same mountain that you're talking about. And when it is raining, it's almost obscured behind the clouds. My mind would wander up to that hill, and I was told by some people that there are shoot and sight orders if you're found climbing the hill there, or there are rumors that it's infested with snakes to prevent people from exploring. So in fact, where I live, if you can Google can you see Raghulila Mega Mall?
I'm seeing Manori, Mallad.
Manori, okay, so you need to move exactly perpendicular.
Sky High Tower.
You'll see Kandivali Police Station.
Telephone exchange.
Very good. This is the nucleus of where I grew up.
Wow, nice.
The Poisar Depot, this is the church.
Yeah.
If you go to further east, you will see the train line.
Yes, I see the train line.
And train lines and we could hear the sound of the trains in the winters.
Oh, wow.
So the moment we could hear the horn, you knew that winter had set in and you had to take out the sweaters. If you scroll out a little bit more, then you see to your extreme right, you see this vast green space, which is the Sanjay Gandhi National Park.
Right.
So if I went to the east, I went to the mountains or the national park. But if I went to the left, which is the west, I would go to the sea. I don't get to see either in Bangalore.
That's so true. That's so true. Yeah.
So that's something that I miss.
We're talking about just being in it. We're not trying to do it. Like people say, oh, I did Italy. No, we're not trying to do anything.
I went on a midnight cycling ride and that was very nice.
Yeah.
But I may not want to explore the fort area on cycle. You might as well do it on what you call bus number 11, which is your foot. So just go walking about and...
Our compound Anushakti was shut. And just to step out of it was a big thing. Wow, I'm going to the city and all. And the Anushakti bus depot, we used to have 90 limited. So I would take that, sit on the top, aimless. You just sat and you just went.
Correct. Hawa khane ko.
Bilkul, exactly. And especially that front window, sit in the front end.
I mean, if you got it, it was like this big privilege, like somebody smiling down upon you. I was always fascinated by the idea of getting onto a bus and saying, last stop. Whatever the amount, 20 rupees, 30 rupees, and saying, okay, last stop. And I didn't know where it would end. And you just sit and you go and...
Now those buses and all are not there. So now when I go back, I end up taking Harbour Line train and reconnecting just to...
Absolutely.
Right?
I went with my friend Sudha, who wanted to photograph the graffiti on that ruins. And we just started walking and people were like, who are these weird people walking about?
Yeah.
It was an excellent afternoon. We just took the train and we went and then we had one of those sarbats at the railroad. There are some neighborhoods which only seem fascinating from afar, but they are even more fascinating when you are there. Something which I have never understood. In fact, it was only up to about 2 to 3 years before where the railway said it's okay to take photographs. So they were not enforcing it, but if you were caught taking photographs, the RPF or the GRP, both of them were empowered to, take action against you for photographing railways.
Wow, I don't know that. I keep taking pictures on the train all the time. But in a way, lockdowns have been part of our city.
Like a fun.
Yeah, Band is one thing, but also access-wise.
We've had this sense of distrust amongst our own people. The 2008 attackers came via the fishermen colony, Machimar colony in Badwar Park.
Right.
Now, if the fishermen were always kept alert and said that, look, there is a threat like that, and they could have easily alerted somebody that we are seeing some movement.
Right.
And again, it brings us to that same point, right? Like when decisions are taken for the city, how involved are the citizens?
Correct.
So, for instance, if you were to zoom into Shivdi,
yeah,
which is across the creek from where you grew up,
right,
you see this Shivdi Fort, and it says historic 1680 fort with water views. Before we go to the Shivdi Fort, I would like to highlight this greenery that you see around, which are the mangroves.
Yeah.
An essential component of the island ecosystem, which protect us from strong winds, tidal surges, and they are as diverse as a tropical rainforest. If you zoom out, and you will see these patches of green all across Bombay. They protect the city, but they are essential to the fishermen, because fishes lay their eggs in these protected areas.
Oh.
So if you see the Shivdi Fort, it's like this small outcrop onto the into the sea.
Yeah.
But this sudden appearance of flamingos, it's not like they've been coming here for a long time, but suddenly they just appeared one day.
Wow.
And the fort was, sort of established in 1680. And back then, the British had a small, maybe like a band of 20-25 soldiers posted there. Is this obscure piece of history that is, lying hidden away in the eastern industrial landscape of Bombay.
In a way, I have to sort of hold on to that connection in my mind through memories. And I feel like a stronger longing, really. When will I go back? Will I ever go back again? I don't know. Is this making us closer to the city, or is it making us distant from the city?
My default city on the newspaper, because in the lockdown, and this is probably the first time that I started reading an online version of the newspaper. The default is not Bangalore.
Right.
Default is still Bombay. I would get a chance to visit if things were better. So I don't need to be so connected. But now maybe yes, I think I agree with you. I think
to think of this in a very sort of anthropomorphized way. Are we parting with the city, or I've been away very long, and there are times when I'm like, am I supposed to, let go of this? I always feel like, no, how can I get over it?
Yeah, and it's not over. Otherwise, apart from nostalgia, you have the future and you have the present. And present you are already living in, so there's no escaping that.
Yeah, and future किसने देखा है क्या पता?
देखा है, वही तो.
जो है
टाइम नहीं है.
हाँ वही, और जो हुआ है और जो है उसको celebrate करो फिर. Nostalgia में,
Exactly.
Like you said, I love it. Just dunk yourself into it.
Yeah, और कुछ नहीं है.
Minds construct landscapes out of what they pay attention to, projecting surroundings onto themselves to create maps to move and act by. Surely what we map is already mapped for us. Yes, it is. Swirls of power map the city for us, order us in even our drifts. They map the times for us, order us into boxes. And when, with time, maps fail, frayed edges, walls crumbling into the landscape, the breeze will blow flakes of scattered déjà vu, intermittent encounters with jamais vu. Cities are formed of moments, temperaments, hands are held, sunlight slanting, bus stop waiting, never saying goodbye. Neighborhoods become entire cities when seen from afar. Like how the brain maps for itself exaggeratedly parts of the body that it favors, the body then an asymmetric, unbalanced representational model of itself. So, the city gives weight to moments and maps lives unfolded in the folds of its map. How will the experience of this time of shrinking shift our map of the world itself, of ourselves, of each other? Did we actually make plans to meet? Whatever for. I remember why, do you? But it doesn't matter, we will forget why when we meet. And so, we see each other refreshed, renewed, now in spirit, and then in the flesh.